Billionaire became homeless and cried at what he saw. Imagine a man so rich he could buy anything, but chose to become homeless for a day. This is the story of a billionaire who wanted to see the world without luxury and ended up crying at what he discovered. He left his mansion, traded his suit for torn clothes, and threw himself into the streets, invisible to everyone. No one knew who he was. No one imagined what was coming next, but what he saw broke even the coldest man's heart. Why would a billionaire cry? You're about to find out in this emotional and surprising story no one ever told before. But watch until the end, because the ending of this story will change the way you see people on the streets.
A man in an expensive suit, surrounded by employees, security cameras, and luxury cars, walks into the garage of his mansion. He stops, takes a deep breath, and makes a decision that will change everything. He takes off the suit, puts on old, torn clothes he bought at a thrift store. He grabs a worn-out cap, covers part of his face with a fake beard, and purposefully smears dirt on his face. Then he gets into a simple car no one would recognize as his. Arthur, 48 years old, a billionaire in the real estate industry. Tall, gray-haired, serious look. Known as a cold, direct businessman, but very smart. He was always reserved and rarely smiled. One day, Arthur was in his 600 square meter penthouse, looking out the window. He saw a homeless man digging through the trash in front of the building. That was the moment something inside him broke. Even though he had everything, Arthur never knew what it meant to need help. And he wanted to find out how far the character of those around him would go. In the first quick cuts, we show Arthur already disguised as a homeless man, walking the streets with plastic bags, asking for water at a fancy restaurant, being ignored by the customers. The audience already senses something big is going to happen in the end. A secret, a revelation, or a twist. The background music rises, creating urgency. Arthur, a man who had everything, now walking the sidewalks as if he never had anything. He wanted to know, would people help someone who had nothing to give in return? Deep down, does kindness still exist? Arthur walks through a busy square, asking dozens of people for spare change. Some avoid eye contact, others insult him, others seem to feel pity, but no one stops to listen. A mother pulls her child away, saying, "Don't look at him." A man in his suit looks Arthur up and down and shakes his head, laughing. Arthur sits on the curb staring at his own hands, feeling a tightness in his chest he had never felt before. An elderly woman named Donna Lucinda, who sells flowers on the sidewalk, offers Arthur a piece of bread she brought from home. She doesn't ask anything, she just holds out the bread with a tired smile. Arthur, emotional, tries to decline. Donna Lucinda insists, "People who are hungry don't need to apologize." At that moment, the audience begins to realize that the video isn't just about the billionaire, it's about those who truly have heart. Arthur decides to spend another night on the streets, sleeping on a park bench. That night, he hears emotional stories from other homeless people. A man who lost everything after a debt, a pregnant woman kicked out of her house by her family, a former teacher who became a drug addict. Arthur, who always lived surrounded by luxury, listens in silence, eyes filled with tears. The next morning, Arthur wakes up with back pain, clothes soaked from the dew, and swollen eyes. He notices something strange. The wallet where he kept a few coins is missing. Looking around, he realizes it's not so easy to trust everyone, and that life on the streets is harsher than he ever imagined.
Arthur woke up before the sun rose. The wind was cold. The smell of wet asphalt was strong. His body ached in a way he had never felt before. His back throbbed, his legs were heavy. He reached into his pocket and realized it's gone. The few coins he had set aside, not for himself, but to help someone on the streets, had disappeared. Someone had robbed him while he slept. Arthur felt a strange emptiness, a bitter taste in his mouth. So this is what it feels like. Helplessness. That was just one night for him, but for many there, it was their whole life. Still shaken, Arthur gets up and starts walking through the streets. The stores were beginning to open. The buses were packed. He watched the rush of people. No one looked at those sleeping on the ground. He walked to a corner cafe, looked inside, saw people smiling on their phones, complaining about cold coffee. He took a deep breath and pushed the door. As he entered, Arthur felt all eyes turn to him. Torn clothes, the smell, the unshaven face. He walked to the counter, placing his hands on the cold marble. "Good morning. Could I have a glass of water, please?" The attendant, a young woman in a black uniform, stepped back, looked at the manager, who approached with an impatient face. "Sir, you need to leave. You're scaring the customers." Arthur insisted, his voice trembling with emotion. "Just a glass of water, please." The manager pointed to the door. "Leave now." Arthur left, head down. But across the street, who was there? Mrs. Lucinda, the flower vendor from the day before. She waved him over with her wrinkled hand, held out an almost empty bottle of water, and gave it to him. "I don't have much, but sharing is the least I can do, son." Arthur held the bottle, looked into her eyes, barely able to speak. "Why do you do this, ma'am?" "Because those who have little know the value of a little." Arthur sat next to Mrs. Lucinda. She began to share her story. She lost her husband at 42. Her son disappeared more than 15 years ago. She survives selling flowers, but still helps whoever she can. As they talked, another character approached. Carlos, 36 years old, former mechanic. A sun-marked face, missing teeth, but a bright look in his eyes. "I saw someone stole from you yesterday. That's how it is here. But not everyone is bad." Carlos shared how he once had a home, a wife, a steady job. An unexpected hospital bill ruined it all. Now he sleeps under a canopy and does odd jobs by day. He showed a wrinkled photo of his daughter he hasn't seen in years. Mrs. Lucinda caressed a wilted flower in the bucket, but spoke of it as if it were a treasure. Arthur listened silently, heart heavy. He realized he had never heard stories like these because he had always lived behind high walls and mirrored windows. Arthur wanted to help. He thought about revealing who he was, but decided it wasn't time yet. He wanted to see how far the coldness or kindness of ordinary people could go. So he walked downtown, where the crowds were bigger. In the midst of the chaos, Arthur held out his hand for change. Almost no one stopped. Some cursed at him, others avoided him. But suddenly, a young woman looked him in the eyes. Marina, 23, student, backpack, college uniform. "Are you okay, sir? Would you like something to eat?" Arthur hesitated, then nodded. Marina bought a pastry and a juice, handed it to him, smiling. "Sorry, I can't do more." Arthur nearly cried. "You've already done so much, miss." Marina ran to catch her bus, looked back and smiled. Arthur held the pastry like it was gold, his eyes full of gratitude. Arthur began to question, how can it be? Those who have little give, those who have much turn away. He realized he was discovering something money could never buy. Empathy. As evening came, Arthur returned to the square. He saw an elderly man collapsed on the ground. No one stopped to help. He ran, knelt down, shook the man. "Sir, are you okay?" The man opened his eyes weakly. He was faint, starving. Arthur, though hungry, gave him the pastry Marina had given him. Night fell. The cold grew stronger. Arthur sat under a canopy, hugging his knees. He watched the lit-up city, people coming and going, never noticing who sleeps on the sidewalk. Arthur was about to give up the experiment. But then, something happened. A luxury car parked. Out stepped a man he knew very well, Eduardo, his business partner and right-hand man. Eduardo didn't even recognize Arthur disguised as a homeless man. He walked by in a hurry. Arthur watched, a lump in his throat, and realized he would never see me if I weren't who I am.
Arthur is sitting under the awning, looking at the distant lights of the buildings he himself helped construct. The wind cuts across his face, and the city no longer feels so welcoming. He remembers Eduardo's glance, his business partner, who rushed past without noticing. Not even my best friend would recognize me like this. Arthur feels a deep loneliness, unlike anything he's ever experienced. I built skyscrapers, invested millions, but I never built a bridge to those who truly need it. Next to Arthur, other homeless people begin to arrive to sleep. They share pieces of bread, pieces of cardboard, stories, and fears. Arthur realizes that even in misery, there is solidarity among them. Among these people, Arthur meets Leandro, 19 years old, who ran away from home. Leandro shows a fresh wound on his leg, saying he was chased by security guards after trying to grab a piece of bread. Arthur looks at the wound, angered by the injustice. "You need a doctor." Leandro laughs sadly. "A doctor? Here? Only when we're dead." Leandro asks Arthur, "And you, sir? What's your story?" Arthur hesitates. He could lie, but decides to say something true, without revealing who he is. "I had a good life, but I spent so much time looking up, I never saw who was falling beside me." Leandro stays silent, nods his head. "Yeah, everybody has a fall, right?" In the morning, Arthur decides to walk to a wealthier neighborhood to see if people's reactions change. He enters a famous bakery, elegant, full of well-dressed people. He humbly asks, "Please, just a day-old roll." The clerk makes a disgusted face. "This isn't a place for you." A security guard approaches. "Leave before I call the police." Some customers laugh, watching the scene. A lady whispers something to her friend, shaking her head disapprovingly. Arthur leaves with his head down and his stomach growling. Across the street, a girl around 7 years old named Clara holds her mother's hand and tugs at her. "Mommy, he looks hungry." The mother hesitates, but opens her purse and gives Arthur an apple. He thanks her, emotional, his voice trembling. "Thank you. God bless you both." The mother smiles, slightly embarrassed. "It's not much, but I hope it helps." Arthur thinks, if a child can feel compassion, where did we adults lose it? Arthur returns to the square where Donna Lucinda sells flowers. She notices something different in his eyes. "You've seen too much, haven't you?" Arthur takes a deep breath. "I saw things I never imagined. People with little, giving their all, and those with much, not even offering a glance." Donna Lucinda smiles with ancient wisdom. Value isn't in what you have, but in what you do. Arthur helps Lucinda organize the flowers. She says she barely slept last night, worried about him. "I could tell you were different. Your eyes show someone who had everything, but lost something inside." Arthur lowers his head, emotional. "Maybe I never really had it." As they talk, a city inspector arrives with 2 guards. He begins collecting Lucinda's flowers. "It's forbidden to sell here without a permit." Lucinda pleads, "I only sell to survive." The inspector pushes the flowers to the ground. Arthur watches, his blood boiling. Arthur tries to intervene. "Please, don't do this." The inspector looks at Arthur, sees his ragged clothes. "Who are you to say anything? Get out of the way, filthy old man." Arthur kneels, trying to gather the fallen flowers. Lucinda holds his hands. "Let it go, my son. They'll never understand." The crowd senses the injustice, the cruelty. Arthur is outraged, but still doesn't reveal who he is. Arthur realizes he needs to go beyond the experience. He needs to act, but he decides to wait for the right moment after seeing more. He looks at Lucinda, at Leandro and Carlos who arrived to help. "I promise this won't end like this." Arthur walks away, his heart heavy, but with a seed of change growing inside him. He looks toward the city, shining in the distance. Maybe my money can finally be used for something greater.
Night has fallen. Heart-determined Arthur walks through the streets. The city lights contrast with the darkness he feels inside. He thinks about everything he's been through, the looks of contempt, the closed doors, the bread denied, but also the simple acts of kindness that warmed his heart more than any wealth ever could. Inner reflection. I always thought I knew what value was, but value isn't measured in zeros in a bank account. It's measured in empathy, courage, and generosity. Arthur returns to the square where he usually sleeps. There he finds Leandro, Carlos, and Donna Lucinda already gathered. They greet him with cautious joy. "We thought you weren't coming back," says Carlos. Arthur responds, looking each of them in the eyes. "I came back, and I want to help you." Leandro, suspiciously, "Help? With what? You don't even have a place to die in." Arthur smiles, not revealing who he is. "Maybe I have more than you think, but I need you to trust me." Arthur proposes something unexpected. "Let's clean up this place, organize our things. I want to show that even without money, we can have dignity." Carlos hesitates. "What for? No one's gonna notice." Arthur, "Maybe someone will. And even if they don't, we will feel it." They sweep the sidewalk, arrange the cardboard in rows. Lucinda organizes the wilted flowers as if they were trophies. Arthur cleans an old bench and paints a heart on a piece of wood found in the trash. Leandro, who has always been doubtful, helps without a word and at the end of the day smiles for the first time. Dawn of a new day. The sun rises, lighting that piece of street that now looks different. People walking by look away less. Some even comment, "Who fixed this place up?" Arthur watches, his heart full of hope. He walks past shops seeing people complain about small things. The coffee that came cold, the traffic light that changed too fast, the heat that's too much. They don't know the value of a night without hunger, Arthur thinks. From afar, Arthur sees Marina, the student who gave him food days ago, waiting for the bus. He approaches slowly. She recognizes him, smiles. "Hi, how are you?" Arthur thanks her. "That snack meant more than you know. It saved a hard day." Marina, "I always think that could be me there." Arthur smiles. "Stay that way. The world needs more people like you." Arthur watches Marina get on the bus, crowded with tired people, but still smiling. Night. A striking conversation. Arthur returns to the square and talks to Dona Lucinda. "Why do you keep helping even when you have almost nothing?" Dona Lucinda, looking at the moon. "Because when my son disappeared, I thought he might need someone like me. If I don't help, who will?" Arthur holds back tears, grabs her hand. "He'd be proud of you." Inner reflection. The most broken people are the ones who try hardest to fix the world. During the night, a group of drunk young men pass by laughing, kicking the homeless people's things. They knock over Lucinda's flowers and even curse. Arthur stands up to confront them. "Leave her alone." One of the boys pushes Arthur. "Who's gonna stop me? You?" Arthur falls to the ground. He feels the pain but gets up slowly, eyes firm. The boys walk away laughing. Lucinda grabs Arthur's arm. "It's not worth it." Arthur looks at her. "Maybe not for us, but for those who will come after." Arthur helps Lucinda pick up the trampled flowers. She holds a broken flower and says, "Even hurt, she still tries to bloom." Arthur decides that the next day, he'll do something bigger. It's time for people to see what I saw. He plans to record everything, the looks, the humiliations, the small acts of kindness. He wants to show the world the contrast he lived. Before sleeping, Arthur writes on a piece of cardboard, "No one is so poor they can't give a smile." Arthur closes his eyes and thinks, "Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow I'll show who I am, and I'll show who they are." Arthur lies down on the cardboard, looking at the starry sky, his face tired, but his eyes determined. Maybe this is the most important thing I've ever done.
Dawn of decision. Arthur wakes up before the sun rises. His body aches, but his heart beats strong. From the old backpack he's carried since the beginning, he pulls out a small device, a hidden camera he bought days before the experiment began. Today, I'm going to show the world what it means to be invisible. Arthur records everything. People who look away when he asks for help, store employees who kick him out without hearing a word, luxury cars that drive by without even glancing at who's on the sidewalk. In a powerful moment, he walks past a building constructed by his own company. He looks up. I was the one who raised these walls, and now I can't even go inside to use the bathroom. He records the contrast. Across the street, a giant billboard shows his photo, clean, in a suit, with a rehearsed smile. Internal reflection. I own buildings where I can't even drink water. Who are we, really?
Arthur heads to an expensive restaurant where he used to have lunch. He approaches the entrance, humbly asks, "Please, let me use the bathroom." The security guard shakes his head. "You can't." Arthur insists, "Just the bathroom. Get out of here before I call the police." Arthur steps back, films his tired face. I never thought hearing no would hurt this much. Moments later, Marina passes by, the student who had helped him before. She recognizes him, sees the pain. "Are you okay?" Arthur, with a shaky voice, "Today was harder." Touched, Marina opens her backpack, takes out a sandwich, and offers it. "Please, eat." He discreetly records her gesture. Marina doesn't ask who he is, or why he's there. She simply helps, like always. Arthur thinks, she has so little and gives so much. Arthur decides to go to his company's building where he worked for years. He tries to enter through the reception. The guard doesn't recognize him. "Sir, you can't be here." Arthur, "I just want to talk to someone." "There's a meeting going on. Get out." While they argue, the elevator opens and out comes Eduardo, his business partner. Arthur, emotional, approaches. "Eduardo." Eduardo looks, doesn't recognize him. "Get out of my way, old man." Arthur almost says who he is, but holds back, filming everything. He hides, watches Eduardo talking to another executive. Arthur disappeared these past days. It's for the best. I think it's time to change the leadership. Arthur feels the ground vanish beneath his feet. My own friend, hoping I'd disappear. Deep reflection. This is what I needed to see. When you have nothing, even those who called themselves friends reveal who they are. Arthur goes to the plaza to tell everything to Dona Lucinda, Carlos, and Leandro. He reveals part of the truth. I'm here because I wanted to see what people are really like. Dona Lucinda looks deep into his eyes. And what did you find out? Arthur, almost in tears, that those who have the least are often the ones who help the most. He shows the footage on the camera's small screen. They watch in silence. Closed doors, humiliation, and a few acts of kindness. Leandro, with tears in his eyes. So now the world knows who we are? Arthur, they will, and they'll know who you are too. Arthur makes a decision. The next day he will reveal everything to everyone. He wants to show who ignored, who humiliated, and who helped. At night, Arthur organizes the footage on the camera. He looks up at the stars, speaks to himself. Tomorrow I'll return to who I am, and I'll honor those who reached out to me. In the middle of the night, a man steals Arthur's backpack, taking the camera. Arthur runs after him, stumbles, falls to the ground. He sees the thief disappear around the corner. No, I can't lose that footage. Arthur sits on the sidewalk, face in hands, feeling the weight of days of suffering vanish in seconds. But then, Carlos approaches. I saw where he went. Let's go. Arthur and Carlos run through alleys. They find the man trying to open the backpack in a dark alley. Arthur shouts, Please, that means nothing to you, but it's everything to me. The man looks at Arthur, sees the desperation in his eyes, and hesitates. Why does it matter so much? Arthur, because it's going to show the truth. The man returns the backpack without a word, then disappears. Arthur hugs the backpack to his chest, takes a deep breath. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell everything.
A different dawn. Arthur wakes up before everyone else. He looks at the sky, growing later, takes a deep breath. Today is the day. He puts on the same dirty clothes, but inside carries the strength of someone who knows who he is. He walks into a public restroom, washes his face, fixes his hair. In the cracked mirror, he sees for a moment the billionaire he once was and the man he has become. I need both sides to do what comes next. Arthur goes to the headquarters of his own construction company. At the front desk, the same security guard from before tries to stop him. I already told you. Arthur pulls something from his pocket, his real ID. The guard reads it, eyes wide. Mr. Arthur, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Arthur, firmly, and even so, you threw me out. I was just a man asking for help. Arthur enters the company. Employees stop to stare, surprised by his appearance. He walks into the boardroom, where Eduardo, his partner, and other directors are. Eduardo stands up, embarrassed. Arthur, where have you been? We were worried. Arthur looks him in the eye, places a camera on the table. Worried, or hoping I wouldn't come back. Eduardo tries to deny. It's not like that. Arthur turns on the camera, plays some clips. Eduardo saying, maybe it's time to change leadership. Employees ignoring calls for help. Wealthy clients shutting their doors. Arthur stands tall, voice cracking. You ignored me, and ignored people who only needed to be seen. He also shows Marina sharing a snack, Dona Lucinda offering her water, Leandro, with nothing, offering his company. Arthur, I lived on the streets to see with my own eyes, and I learned that those who have the most share the least, and those who have the least share the most. Eduardo, embarrassed, Arthur, we need to think about the impact of this. Arthur, I already have. That's why I'm going to change everything. He announces to all, we're going to build a real social project, housing, job training, psychological support, and it will carry my name, because I've seen what no one wants to see. Some applaud, moved. Others fall silent, ashamed. Arthur calls Marina, the student. I'd like you to come here. You don't know me, but I got to know you better than most. She timidly walks into the boardroom, still unsure. Arthur stands up. This young woman helped me when no one else did. Her kindness will be the seed of what we're about to build. Marina, surprised, shakes her head. I just did what I thought was right. Arthur introduces Dona Lucinda and Carlos to everyone, showing videos of their kindness. They have more humanity than many who sit in these chairs. I'll sell part of my shares. That money will go to those who truly need it. Arthur looks at Eduardo. If you want a world without compassion, you're free to leave, but I'm going to build a better one. Eduardo lowers his eyes, speechless. Arthur takes off his expensive jacket, places it over the chair, and says, Today I leave behind the man I used to be. Arthur walks out of the building with Marina, Lucinda, and Carlos. Outside, the sun shines brightly on his face. He breathes in, his gaze calm. Now begins the hardest part, but also the most beautiful. Dawn of change. Arthur wakes up on the same bench where he slept days ago. This time, he's no longer alone. Mrs. Lucinda, Leandro, and Carlos are there, laughing and talking. You don't need to sleep here anymore, Arthur says, smiling. Lucinda, moved. And you, sir, will you keep sleeping with us? Arthur shakes his head. I will, until I'm sure everything will work out. The cleanup begins on an old building from the construction company, which Arthur decided to turn into a proper shelter. Arthur, sleeves rolled up, helps paint walls and carry furniture. Journalists arrive to cover the story. They film Arthur, once a billionaire, now in uniform and gloves, painting alongside homeless people. A reporter asks, "Why are you doing this?" Arthur replies, "Because there's no point in building buildings if we don't build bridges between people." The video goes viral online. Comments from emotional viewers. People saying, "I'm going to help too." Others criticize, saying it's just marketing. But Arthur doesn't respond to the hate. He's happy to see many are willing to do something. Leandro starts helping with organization. "I never thought I'd work in a building like this." Arthur places a hand on his shoulder. "Now it's yours too." Mrs. Lucinda sets up a flower stand at the shelter's entrance. Carlos starts teaching other residents how to read and write. Marina, the student, volunteers, bringing snacks and books. Walls gain vibrant colors, windows open to let in the sunlight. The once abandoned place begins to come alive. Arthur's reflection. I used to think helping was just giving money, but helping means being present, listening, giving time, and sometimes giving hope. Some company employees, once cold, start visiting the shelter. An engineer offers volunteer services. A secretary organizes a donation campaign. Arthur observes, even those who seemed indifferent can change. An elderly woman knocks on the shelter's door holding a bag of clothes. I saw your story on TV. I brought what I could. Arthur, touched. Every gesture matters. Thank you so much. Arthur decides to open the shelter's doors to anyone who wants to visit, see the reality, and help. On the first night, with everyone settled in, Arthur gives a simple speech. This place isn't mine. It's ours. And today, it becomes a home. Leandro smiles, saying he's sleeping in a bed for the first time in years. Mrs. Lucinda places a flower in a vase, saying, now it's truly beautiful. Arthur, who once looked up at buildings and bank accounts, now looks at people. He talks, listens to stories. A man who lost everything after losing his job. A woman who fled an abusive relationship. Young people born on the streets who never had a chance. I can't change their past, but I can help write a better future. The press presses on. Arthur, will you keep this going, or is it just a one-time thing? Arthur replies firmly. It's not a project. It's a commitment. He announces the creation of a permanent foundation funded with part of his fortune. Mrs. Lucinda holds his hand. You saved lives, my son. Arthur, you were the ones who saved mine. Arthur returns to the company building to speak to all employees. I left for a few days and discovered that the greatest wealth isn't in here, but out there. Arthur, from the rooftop of the newly renovated shelter, watches the sunset. Leandro approaches. What are you thinking? Arthur smiles. That I finally built something that truly matters.
New day, new life. The sun rises, illuminating the building that was once gray and abandoned. Today, from above, we see flowers in the windows, children playing in the courtyard, and happy voices echoing through the halls. Arthur observes everything, taking a deep breath. Internal reflection. I spent a lifetime building walls. It only took a few weeks to learn it was better to build bridges. Arthur walks through the shelter, greeting each person. Mrs. Lucinda is organizing a little flower fair. Carlos is teaching two new young men how to read. Leandro was painting a mural with the phrase, no one is so poor they can't give a smile. Marina arrives with bags of fresh bread. Would you like some coffee? Arthur smiles. Now I'm just Arthur, and yes, I would. A group of students appears at the gate saying they want to volunteer. Arthur opens the gate with joy. There's room for everyone. Arthur gathers the staff once more. This is not a charity project. It's a new beginning, for them and for us. He proposes that everyone spend one day a month at the shelter helping directly, to remind us who we are and who we serve. Some hesitate, but many agree, touched. Business-suited employees carrying boxes into the shelter. Children teaching executives how to draw. Genuine laughter breaking invisible barriers. Arthur reflects. What once separated rich and poor was just fear, and fear disappears when we look into each other's eyes. Arthur records a video for social media, speaking directly to everyone. I was a billionaire who saw nothing but numbers. I had to become homeless to truly see people. The people who helped me the most had almost nothing, and those who had the most often didn't even offer a glance. If you're watching this, do something today. It can be small. A smile, a word, a loaf of bread. It might save someone's hard day. Arthur shows images of Marina, Lucinda, Leandro, Carlos, all smiling. They taught me more than any MBA or board meeting. Arthur decides to give up part of his fortune to keep the project alive forever.
so I can sleep peacefully knowing I'm not just leaving concrete behind, but also hope. Arthur, now simple, walks beside Leandro. And you? Are you staying? Leandro, I want to. For the first time, I feel like I belong somewhere. Arthur, looking into the camera. I went to the streets looking for truth and found my heart that was lost. Maybe you don't have to lose everything to find what really matters. But if you want to know, just look around and ask, what can I give? Arthur watches children playing, people laughing, and thinks, it was here, among those who had nothing, that I found everything. Moral of the story? True wealth isn't measured by what you keep, but by what you share. Closing. Thank you for staying with me this far. Now tell me, what would you do differently if you saw what I saw? From my heart, thank you for watching to the end. You were part of this change, but know this, the best is yet to come. If you'd like to see more emotional stories like this, subscribe and watch the next recommended video right here on the side. Because stories have power, and when we share them, we transform the world one heart at a time.